One Piece chapter 1182 is here, and it is an absolute banger. We've got rain gods, we've got sun gods, we've got war gods, we've got forest gods, and we've got sea gods, all right? Every god is here, all right? So please, for me, like, comment, subscribe on this video. It really helps me out against the algorithm. I'm a small new channel here, and any support I can get goes greatly appreciated, all right? And so the One Piece chapter 1182, titled Zaza. Now, Zaza... That's so fun. The Zaza is a bit of an onomatopoeian word in Japanese. It refers to heavy rainfall, which is we'll get to at the end of the chapter. And so here we are, One Piece chapter 1082, Zaza. And so the chapter starts off with this adorable cover spread with Fujitora eating some udon prepared by a fox and a tanuki. Now listen, I will admit this right now, Fujitora is probably my favorite admiral. I absolutely love how he is if you know about Fujitora's backstory in the SBS, he started off as a bright, cheery-eyed young man and a kid who wanted to make the world a better place, but through the crimes that happened in a country where he was forced to be a part of, blinded himself, and through the World Military Draft, became a member of the Navy, became a Navy admiral, rose to the ranks, and he's probably the most wholesome admiral because he takes people at their word to a fault. He's willing to defy his superiors to admit the faults of King Rico, the world government, to King Rikudo III at Dressrosa. He basically frees a bunch of slaves by ignoring orders and going against Green Bull. So Fujitora is absolutely goated, all right. And to see him having this food is pretty good. And again, most of the admirals, they're not doing pretty well. Sakazuki's stuck behind a desk, crashing out and raging out. Borsalino is basically just traumatized from being forced to murder his best friend. And Green Bull's just like the worst personality of the admirals we've seen. Like seriously, like I think he's worse than Nakayuna. Actually, he's worse than Nakayuna in a lot of ways. All right, he's an unrepentant slaver and an asshole. So yeah, Fujitora is goated. All right, he's absolutely goated. Right, he's been traumatized. Yeah, he's blind, and he's actually no blind's not an issue for him with hockey, but still, he's doing good. All right, so the chapter rolls right off as we see the continuation of Loki's battle with Emu. Loki at the end of the last chapter basically reverted. After he had slammed Emu into the tree, reverted to his Needhawk form, his dragon form, and basically fired off a Thunderheim. Now, Emu basically blocked it with his Omen technique, and Loki is beginning to feel tired. He's like, I can still feel his presence. He does that classic thing in Shonen where you can sense their power despite trying to kill them with an attack. You're like, did I kill him? Okay, no, he's still alive. Okay, we're going to hit them even harder now. Okay, I know the trick. We hit them really, really hard. That'll work. That always works, okay? And remember, Loki's not 100%. Remember, in the beginning of this arc, he was tortured by Gunko and Shamrock. And so when he was patched up by Gerd was like, hey, it's going to take him a few months to recover. He's not going to get back instantly, all right? So Loki's still not exactly 100%. All right? And then when he's fighting him, Loki's like, man, I'm too big to track him properly. Now, this is probably a downside of being a Needhawk when you're this big is you can't track your opponent properly because you are essentially this big and everything's moving around so fast you can't keep up with it, right? And then you see Emu basically after he's been planted into the tree like in Dragon Ball, you're planted into some stone pillar, and then he looks up and then he responds, Needhawk, to think you and I would meet again in this world. Emu's beginning to cough. He's like, you traitor. And so two things that made him sit out. Emu referring Needhawk as a traitor. Now listen, in real world history and politics, alliances can be shifting at the drop of a hat, all right? What your ideologies are, it sometimes won't matter into what is convenient, all right? So when he calls Needhawk a traitor, maybe Elbalf, under the command of the War God, was on the faction of the 20 kings that formed the world government, but once the War God had seen the previous user of the Needhawk fruit, had seen the direction Emu and the other kings were going, he immediately switched sides like, nah, fuck this, I'm out. Joy Boy, I'll rock with you. I'll rock with you, Joy Boy. And so he comes to the conclusion, he's like, yeah, no, this is way better. I'd rather not work with these guys at all. And so he calls him a traitor, right? This mirrors real life events where, say, for example, in the eve of World War I, Italy had an alliance with Germany, but it was a defensive alliance where they basically didn't have to join the Central Powers if the Central Powers went on the offensive, which they did. And because it's Italy stayed neutral in the beginning, but it later joined the Entente because the Entente basically said, hey, you can get a bunch of land from Austria-Hungary near Croatia and everything on the Straits if you join us. And Italy joined them on that front of World War I. So again, this mirrors also events like, for example, in World War II, a lot of countries made deals with, appease Nazi Germany. The Soviets were the last one, But it got to the point that when their secret non-aggression pact, they basically helped carve up Poland, and they basically agreed to share materials and other stuff, and the whole other thing that happens. But basically, what this looks like is Elbalf, under the War God, basically was on the side of Emu and the 20 Kings against Joy Boy, but they switched sides midway through the war, essentially, when they realized, okay, this is not what we want. We do not want this at all. All right, and how bad do you have to be for a literal war god to be like, whoa, you've lost me, man. That's way too far. And Emu said himself that the clan, Emu, don't forget, Elbalf is of the D, so there's some connection to the Will of D there. And we also see Emu coughing. Now, we remember from 1179, Emu cannot descend into the lower realm. For some reason, they didn't want that at all, right? And now this is, and remember, when he went down there, he was in pain, his nose began to bleed, and so they were just thinking like, okay, so what's going on? What is this power? And so then we see the continue, and then we see him begin to cough up. And then the next panel, we see Emu look, it begins to snow, but begins to fall. He's like, snow, of course. Lightning is born from colliding ice. Together, this energy is exceptional. And so this gets into meteorology, how hot air rises, and the energy basically causes cold air to drop. And essentially, that energy is how lightning storms are created. I'm not a meteorologist. This is all I know. I'm like bare bones, like 1% knowledge on this topic. So please take that up. And so essentially, you have Emu basically point to Ragnir. Now, I find this hilarious because Ragnir almost certainly was there during the voice entry. So he can tell you some stuff. So someone calls Chopper, I'll be like, hey, Chopper, what's this dude saying? And he basically says, Ragnir, how nostalgic. And you see Ratatoskr, all right, the Ragnir, the hammer, begin to basically give Emu the business. And Emu was like, oh, how nostalgic. I'm remembering my past when I used to fight against Needhog, Ragnir, Davy D. Jones, Joy Boy, all of those people, and he's getting nostalgic. Because remember, Emu doesn't come to the lower realm, so this is probably the first conversation he's had with somebody, well, Rox 56 years ago, but probably the longest conversation he's had with somebody outside of Marijois in, almost a millennia. So, hey, kudos for him. He's probably just being nostalgic in his old age. And then we finally get confirmation, all right? We get the confirmation of Ratatoskr's powers, all right? Because Emu was responding, Ragnir, thou as I remember thee, waiting all this time for a new master, because we know that Ragnir had Ratatosk Ragnir, essentially the warhammer of the previous Needhog user of Elbalf, the war god, had basically been protecting Elbalf's fruit, the Needhog fruit, until he found someone worthy enough to eat it. That was Loki. And then so we get confirmation after Ratatosk basically trash talks Emu. Ragnir the hammer, the mythical squirrel fruit, model Ratatosk. Yeah, okay, add another mythical zone to the list. We have way more mythical zones than Lokius. I'm sorry, Kizaru was wrong, all right? He was lying. They are not more rare than Lokius, all right? They're probably more powerful on average, but this is another one. Okay, I get it. We're in the land of giants. This is Norse mythology. There's going to be legendary creatures everywhere in this story. But I find it hilarious that essentially we basically get the idea that, Odin's like, I needed power that fits the situation, so it's going to be a mythical zone, all right? It is what it is, all right? What can he do about it? And so then we basically cut away. We see them basically, Loki and Ragnir do a combination attack. Now, before I go read the next panel, I realized something. When Ragnir is basically shit-talking Emu, he's basically calling him out. He does not look happy. He's angry. And listen, we need to call Kronk from the Emperor's New Groove. Remember Kronk, the lovable guy, bit of a meathead, but still a sweet guy. He speaks with a squirrel. So, he could translate this, but he'd probably be like, he's basically calling you a pussy bitch, and fuck you. So, that's what he says. And so then we see a combination attack between Ragnir and Loki. Ragnir basically creates a giant frost cloud of ice, and then Loki fires off a bunch of thunderbolts called Ragna 5, I believe. Ragna 5 arrows, and the two just combine. And then Emu basically takes the black fire around him, and then he basically spawns it overhead. And then inside those summon those little fireball demons. And the attack name is Tsutsumi Nova Eclipse. And each one of those things just basically negates one of the thunder ice arrows that Loki had sent Emu. And so this gets into Aztec mythology. Now listen, if you really want to get a good sense for One Piece's story, go reread or watch Skypiea, because I promise you, there is a shit ton in there that basically links to this whole story in a bunch of ways, okay? I'm not making this up, okay? You can go back to Skypiea, you see Luffy doing the Joy Boy dance, or the Nika dance. So, yes, That happened, all right, in Skypiea. It was like chapter 290 something. I don't know what it was, but it was there. And so then we see the explosions, and it basically just wrecks the whole forest, all right? And Emu is basically blocking them all, and Loki and Emu are basically getting into an energy battle. You know, in Dragon Ball, people are just firing off ki blasts, be like, bam, 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 bam. That's what they're doing, all right? And this gets into, I want to comment on this, all right? The Tsutsumi in Aztec mythology. Right? Tsutsumi are celestial beings / gods / devils, and while they represent on one hand fertility and protecting children, they also represent eclipses, because when a Tsutsumi essentially is when it goes out to attack the sun, that's the idea what causes the eclipse in Aztec mythology. And so people would try to literally cut open a man's chest cavity and see if that would possess him and start a fire. And this kind of links to the idea like that with Emu's possession. And also with Tsutsumi, one of the things that they exist and people's fears of them is the fear of change. Because if a Tsutsumi doesn't consume a person, doesn't light a fire in someone's chest, that basically means that the current sun age is ending. And one of the things that they don't want to do is the fear of change. And that kind of links back to Emu and his idea of Mu's perfect world, the world that Mu wants to create. And so we see of this. And then we basically cut away. Hey, we see the after effects of the forest, and it's just getting absolutely demolished. And then we see Bonnie essentially right here, and she's just like, man, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And then Lilith tells her, get back, Bonnie, get back. All right. And Bonnie's like, listen, I am not fighting. All right. Bonnie, yeah, she basically can copy Nika-like powers, but she is not that level. It's one thing to fight Saturn with Luffy helping you. It's another thing to fight Emu. This is a whole awesome. She's like, yeah, I'm not going to their fight. I'm not going to fight that guy. And Lilith's like, you're damn straight, your ass is sitting right here so I can keep an eye on you, all right? It's my job to look after you. And I won't let that happen, all right? Still, she's like, Lilith's thinking, like, who is this person, okay? Because remember, Lilith is a Vegapunk, and Vegapunk, while privy to a lot of information, didn't know everything about the world government, especially its history and its secrets. So this causes problems, where Lilith is like, all right, who is this person? He clearly outranks the Holy Knights, but he's not one of the 5 elders. He's not like someone like Saturn or Saint Ethan Norasturo. Well, Saturn's dead, so more like our Garling in this case. And then so like, but he clearly outranks that he's not one of the 5 elders. So who is this person? And then so this is, you see a shot of Lilith with Stella, the original Vegapunk, beside her. And it's like, well, I suppose it's only natural for a vast 800-year-old organization like the world government to have spawned a few nasty shadows, given its history of power struggles. And then so Lilith is beginning to connect the dots. Okay, this is probably the shadow ruler that's probably ruling the world behind the scenes, because we don't typically see a lot of this in the story. And then we cut away. Then we see Sanji on the ground, okay? Sanji, remember, in the last chapter, had been kicked in the face with an Omen attack by Emu. So, Sanji fans, Sanji upscale, all right? You can clown Zoro fans. He's a citizen of hell, all right? He's the dark-skinned merchant hunter, all right? He's all those things, okay? He ain't shit. He basically got a tail. He got bitch smacked by Emu's dick, all right? And Sanji got a leg, okay? So, Sanji fans, you can now trash Zoro fans, all right? Sanji upscale, okay? Push it. You can push it through, okay? Sanji upscale. And then you see Sanji on the ground getting up, and he tries to move up, and then Bonnie's like, what, you're still injured? And he's like, I can't get back down, Bonnie. I have to keep fighting, okay? And then we cut away to a little bit of flashback with Killingham. Killingham, for some reason, I don't know why, decided not to kill Sanji when he was defenseless and injured. I don't know why. I don't. Maybe he was just trolling. I don't know, like some stupid Bond villain shit. But he goes on a monologue, and he's like, haha, Sanji, I guess I need to deal with you after all. I gotta admit, though, it's pretty crazy how you got your ass kicked by my boss. Like, he literally just made you into his little bitch. You got your ass whipped by Lord Emu, all right? You did better than that one-eyed, green-haired swordsman, though. I'll give you that. So you get upscale, Sanji. And then Sanji's like, where are you going, you idiot? And then he's like, oh, I'm going to go see if I can finish my mission and grab all those kids. I can feel this power overflowing with me, all right? And then Killingham was in his hybrid form. Remember, he's a Kirin, all right? Or Chillin, if we're using other translations of that name. He goes in, and then he just basically says, all right, toodles, and then he just books it out, all right? And then Sanji just, remember, he's now back up moving. I said, okay, that prick, he hasn't given up on kidnapping the children, right? And then you basically see Bonnie and Lilith telling him to stop. You're not 100%, you can't fight. And then Sanji's like, I gotta keep fighting. I have to keep fighting, okay? If I don't fight and win this battle, everything we've been through would have been for nothing, all right? The land, this country that Usopp and Luffy both admire, respect. It's my personal duty to protect this country. And more than that, more than the sacrifices, more than my friends' wishes, I have to protect all the giant baddies. Ladies and gentlemen, Sanji, Blackleg Sanji, a man of unshakable resolve, whose priorities include Coochie, friends, everything else, and at the very bottom, Zoro. So they just, Lilith and Bind just look around like, is he serious? Is this dude serious? They're like, Lilith's like, yeah, he is. All right, well, hey, Sanji, you are consistent to who you are, man. I believe in you. You got this. You can totally win this. We then cut away to the Owl Library. Now listen, all right? I don't know about you, but when you see a tree house, like a little house, school in a tree house, I'm like, there has to be some hidden passages. They has to be way bigger than it is. It just can't be that one building. So I thought, okay, there has to be some kind of like hidden room or something else going on. And it turns out there was, all right, and it led to an underground passage. And then they see the hidden room where all the books are. Okay, remember in the previous chapters ago, they had tried setting fire to the library with all of the books, including the books the Giants got from Ohara when it was burned down. So when Saul and Robin arrived, the library was frozen because of Ragnir's ice powers, but all the books were missing. And they're like, well, what happened to them? Did somebody take them? What happened? And, we didn't see Biblo, and we're like, okay, Biblo probably took it. And I don't know about you. All right. And you see, Saul being like, hey, man, you saved all those books from the entire fire, Biblo. And Biblo's like, yep, I just used the trapdoor to open it. Now, this gets me thinking, okay, Biblo is a magical owl bird that ate a book fruit, i.e. a fruit that lets him control the size of books, essentially, so he can make it giant size or regular size for humans. And he's chilling on Elbalf. Now, there are certain tropes and themes in fiction. When you see a magical owl, there's only one of two ways this can go. They can be either utterly shittingly terrifying, like Wan Shi Tong from Avatar, or they can be utterly ridiculous, like Hootie from the Owl House. There is no in between with these things, okay? They are just utterly terrifying or completely ridiculous. There is no middle ground with this, okay? And then you see Robin just express her gratitude, right? And then she's like, thank you. I thought they'd all been destroyed because remember, these books are one of the few things Robin has left of her homeland that got Buster called 22 years ago. And then so she's just overjoyed, like, thank you so much. I am so grateful for what you did, Bilbo. I don't know what to thank you. And then you got Saul looking nice, like, yeah, I'm grateful too, but I'm starting to think you're more of a mystery than I first reckoned, Biblo. And Biblo's like, it's like, holy shit, they're onto me. He's like, oh shit, they're onto me. Listen, there is something, okay? Listen, you're a magical bird that talks without a devil fruit. I don't care who you are. What is your story? There's no, there's got to be some magic bullshit here, okay? Are you a homing? Are you something? I don't know what it is, but Biblo, it canonically has a devil fruit powers, but he's like, I was around during the Void Century. You are, yes, and I have a curse placed on me. If I ever talk about it, something bad will happen. What happened? Well, if I talk about the Void Century and then his throat clenches like, I'm being choked. I can't talk about it. And then he just, he dies. So yeah, I don't know what Biblo's past is, but yeah, he just looks at Saul like, please, Saul, I love you, man. Shut up. I don't want you to die. Please just keep your mouth shut. All right. And then we just see Saul like, oh, okay, my bad. And then we cut away to near Western Village, near the Sea Cloud Port. Remember, you've got the Bifrost Bridge, you've got the Western Village, and you've got the Tree Candy. And then you see this little X mark. And then you see a heave ho from Summers. All right. He basically by himself moves a giant Viking longship from Elbalf and just throws it onto the Bifrost Bridge. And then he basically says, hello there, Summers here. No, wait, make that Super Summers. Yeah, Summers has gone Super Saiyan. Like, this reminds me of the line in Dragon Ball when Super Boo was fighting Vegeta and Vegito. He's like, man, Super Boo, Super Vegeta, we might as well call ourselves invincible now. And you know how it works. Anytime you add the name and think super and something, it sounds way cooler and more powerful. You got Super Vegeta, Super Perfect Cell. You've got Super Gogeta. You've got... Yeah, Frankie uses super in all his chat, on his attacks. So, hey, maybe that's why he's so popular. All right, Frankie, upscale. Super. Every time you use super, you just get stronger. That's how it works in shonen battle manga. This is how it works. All right, and then Summer calls him up, and he's like, listen, I found a suitable giant ship. Get those brats over here now so we can use them as leverage, or just basically make them our slave warrior weapons to fight for the government. Remember, because the idea is to kidnap the children and use them as leverage to take to the Holy Land. Now, does this mean Emu is going to probably raise them to be his weapons or use Domi Reversi? We don't know. We haven't seen Domi Reversi used outside of people's homelands. So that's it. We don't know exact plan is for the kids, but I think it's probably to use as leverage or just use them as straight weapons for the future. But giants age at a much slower rate than humans. It would take like centuries, because this kind of reminds me of real life historical examples of kids being taken and brought up as warriors. Like you had the Mamluks, who were basically essentially kids that were taken from their homes and basically made in Central Asia and basically made warriors to various Eastern empires, like say the caliphates in the Middle East. But they also eventually rose to get so much power they would overthrow the kings and become de facto rulers themselves. You also have various, like for example, in the Ottoman Empire, they would basically take kids from the Balkans, and from 1 out of 10 Christian households would offer up a kid, and that kid would be made a janissary over the course of like a lifetime of training. So, and like the Mamluks, they had also amassed political power and influence to overthrow their government. So, tangent aside, they're probably going to make them use as leverage for the government. And then you cut away to the Western Village, all right? Summers had told Killingham, hey, I got 5 minutes, all right? You better move your ass, all right? Then we cut away to the Western Village Tavern, all right? We see Gerd, who's been bandaged up by Chopper. Chopper tells her, you're lucky it was a clean cut, because otherwise I would not have been able to reattach your fingers, all right? But it'll take a few months for you to recover. And she says, thank you. And Gerd's like, thank you, Chopper. I really appreciate it. I'm so used to right now. Remember, Gerd is the doctor on the new giant warrior pirates. She's the one providing medical assistance. She can't even wield a weapon anymore. All right, I'm supposed to be treating everyone, not myself. And then Chopper's like, it can't be helped. All right, this is a war zone now. We got to do what we got to do, all right? And then we cut away to the broader room of everybody in the tavern who's been treated by Chopper. And all the kids are saying, like, thank you, Dr. Chopper. This is Colin saying, thank you, Dr. Chopper. You saved our moms. All right, and then you see Hiruden laid out on the floor, who's bandaged up. Remember, Hiruden took an attack from Emu and got absolutely wrecked. All right, and then Chopper responds like, listen, don't worry, it's just first aid, it's not much. Once this battle's over, I will treat you properly. We then cut away to Road. We all know Road, the creepy dude, cosplaying as a sun god, who kidnaps humans, takes them and puts them in figurine outfits, and pretends to be a sun god and like LARP and shit. Like, LARPing aside, he's kidnapping people and holding them in costumes. He dresses them up in clothing. It's just weird. Road is cringe as hell. Like, it'd be one thing if you liked figurines or LARPing. That's fine. Do whatever you want to do. But when you start kidnapping people and dressing them up in clothes, it gets really weird as hell. Like, he makes Nami wear an outfit without any underwear. Like, again, canonically, Road has seen Nami's privates without any underwear. Yes, he has seen that. No happiness once. This guy's a creep, right? And so then Road responds, oh, Gertasso, is this a dream? My top idol's fingers were severed. I'd humbly offer you my fingers if you need a donor. And then Gerd's like, I'm good, bro. Please just stop. You're creeping me the fuck out. Oh, how could you? How cold? And yet even your spite makes me want you even more. I'm grateful for you turning shitting on me. And then Gerd's like, you know what? I will say this, Road. I'm really impressed by how you stepped up to save brother. I didn't think you could do that, all right? And so we just basically see, risking your life to save your brother, I have a newfound respect for you, Rodo. And then Road is just like, what? Now listen, okay? Gerd had absolutely no respect for Road. She thought he was so bad, she considered him the true shame of Elbalf. Yes, even more so than Loki. Loki, the guy who was accused of murdering Harold and stealing Elbaf's legendary devil fruit. She considered him worse than that. Okay, that was how bad that was. So we basically cut away to that, and so we see Gerd basically, you know what? You went from being a negative 5,000 in my bank account to now a negative 1,500. All right, you got out $3,500, but you're still in the whole 1,500. All right, all the interest you've incurred over the years hasn't gone away; it's still there. But he's climbing himself out, and then you see Rhodes like expression. He's like, "Oh, what? No, what? This can't be." He's like, "Don't get," but Rhodes like, "Don't," and Gerd's like, "Don't get too excited. All right, you're gonna make my wounds burst open again." He's like, "I'm so high on Gerd, Tessel. You're so amazing, Gerd. I love you." And then you see Rhodes' brother Bjorn, who you remember he was trying to save from basically being used by the arrows and hit by Summer's thorns. He's like, "I was starting to look up to you, big bro. I was starting to respect you as a person. Why do you have to be so fucking cringe? Why? You were cool. You risked your life to save me. You're my big bro. You stepped up. Why? You remember the new Giant Warrior Pirates? I don't even know why Hiruden's friends with you. What is this?" See Bjorn just like, people all day today. And then you cut away to near the Western Village, near the part where Zoro's group was, all right? Zoro, who's with Goldberg. Goldberg is the only member of the new giant war pirates who is not injured. Remember, all right? Gerd lost her fingers. Stanson lost his legs. Fucking trying to think about it. Who else? Let's see. Gerd lost her fingers. Stanson lost his leg. Haruden's injured, and Rhodes still out of the fight. And so then you basically see Goldberg is the only one fighting. Goldberg upscale. Goldberg is the last new giant warrior pirate. He is the strongest member. All right, he's still standing. All right, everybody else got taken out real quickly. He's no pushover. His name's Goldberg. All right, he's got a sealed Nash, which is 90% sure the soul of his dead father in there. But that's a whole other discussion for another day. We see him, and then you see Zoro on his shoulder. And Zoro's like, sorry about this, Goldberg. It'd be too long to get there with just giant steps, which is normal steps. We need a giant foot reach, which, let's be real, Zoro would get lost if he didn't climb on Goldberg. He would get lost. So, hey, Zoro would, so he picked the right move. He got on Goldberg. He's like, you know what, I'm going to get lost. So I'm just going to hop on this guy's back and just ride there. And he's like, and Goldberg says, don't worry about it, man. I'm the only member of the crew that's still staying. I'm Goldberg, man. I'm the strongest member of the new giant warrior pirates. I got this, fam. I can take Emu down. And he says, I'm the one who has suffered any injuries. Besides, this is a crisis for all of Elbalf. We're really lucky you guys are here. If you were not here in the Straw Hats, we would be fucked up a creek with no paddle. And then you see Zoro tell him this really awesome line that's just totally based. He's like, listen, homie, our friends' countries are our countries true. And Goldberg's like, man, no wonder Hiruden loves you guys. All right, because the Straw Hats, once Luffy considers you his friend, he will go to bat for you no matter what. He basically overthrew Doflamingo's establishment because he considered Rebecca his friend because she fed him. And he's just like, oh, he did what? Oh, no. I'm kicking his ass. I'm kicking that Doflamingo's ass. So we basically see that happen. And we see Sanji and we see Zoro basically tell him, yeah, but things are getting a little crazy. And then he says, then he's like, well, so what's with these black flames, though? They turn into steel bullets and explosives. And those knives we have seen to power up. So remember, when Emu had used the Omen attack to basically hit Zoro, he basically had this created the effect of seeing these explosives and bullets. All right. Now, let's get to the fact that Devil Fruits are based off desires, and we see more powers like this. I don't know. But we essentially see this play out, and then we cut away to somewhere near the Western Village port, and we call back, and before we come back, we see Zoro basically saying, okay, we need to wrap this up, because the longer this goes, the worse our chances of winning this battle. We need to wrap this up, like now. We need to wrap this up. We do not have a chance if this goes on further, because the stronger they get, the worse the situation gets. All right. Then we cut away to near Western Village port, and we see Killingham begin to freak out because he done goofed. He done messed up. He says, Summers, I've gone and done it now. I really screwed up. He's like, I brought out something insane. And remember, he can use his dream powers to manifest people's biggest nightmares. And then Summers like, Killingham, please tell me you didn't do that. So it turns out that Killingham had actually summoned his biggest fears, all right? Remember, he's on edge. The Straw Hats have basically dog-walked the God's Knights. They basically turned them into their little jokes, and they're just like, all right, I've summoned my biggest fear by accident, all right, and I got carried away, all right? And so then we cut away, literally, to the next panel, and we see Summers basically call him, you stupid idiot. That thing is terrifying for all of us. Why would you manifest your biggest fears like that? Why would you do that? And then he responds, Summers like, hey, Killingham, tell me you can control it. Tell me you can at least control this. And then Killingham's non-confidently responds like, I should be able to. I mean, it's from my powers. It's a dream demon, so probably. Well, Killingham's like, Summers like, Killingham, what's done is done. All right, just hurry back here and get the kids. All right, where's Gunko? And Killingham responds, well, when I saw her, she looked dead. And he's like, wait, what? And so Summers, being the asshole, doesn't give a shit about anybody. He's like, you know what? What's done is done. We have to focus on getting the job done, right? We know that the great emu's body cannot be in the lower world for this long. All right, that's a fact. But now our key combat forces and the forces that must be raised are all right there, right here. We have to finish this. All right, we can't disappoint the great one. All right, we know the price for failure. All right, we've got to keep our jobs. We got to live up to the expectations placed on us, Killingham. Of course, Summers, because they know Emu coming down here into the lower realm to fight everybody has essentially placed them in a situation where they have to do battle. They have to win. And so now they're fighting. And now we see essentially, we cut back to the Western Village, and it is raining cats and dogs. So literally, it is pouring like a thunderstorm, all right? And they say, it's raining cats and dogs. What's going on out here? And then we see, all right, the water's going to flood the whole village. And then he says, Killingham gives the order, go capture those brats. And then we see Colin and Yvilda basically get grabbed by this translucent water-like arm that reaches in there and grabs them, all right? And then we just focus on that for a minute. And then, I feel bad for Colin. All right, the dude's had a rough day. You basically have seen your dad get mauled, your mom injured, and now you're being dragged away by a literal water demon. Like, this kid's going through it, all right? And granted, he's a tough kid. He's been pushing through. He's been handling this a lot better than the other kids of Elbalf for freaking out. But he's just not doing well. And then so Killingham begins to go on a monologue. A big-ass monologue about what the situation is, okay? Because he's going, okay, for those who live at the top above the clouds, i.e., the celestial dragons at Marij, well, remember, they live at the top of the red line. The idea of falling water from the sky is terrifying because apparently they are so up their asses that they hate the idea of anything looking down at them. All right. That's just how I'm looking at this. Is how I'm dissecting it. And then they say, we've all heard stories, not only about the D clan. Remember, this was all set up in Dressrosa, not about Nika, the sun god, who was said to, in some texts, destroy the world, laughing hysterically. We also see the reaction of their biggest fear, all right? We see what a lot of cis dragons and the world government fears, all right? But also the monster known as the rain god, all right? The one who peels the lower realm with water from overhead, all right? And we see just this massive teleport spread of the water god, the rain god, Zaza, all right? And so then we see, all right, god of the rain, Zaza. This is the dream demon, Zaza. And so the creature essentially, all right, she basically has 4 arms, like 2 normal arms and then 2 arms coming out of her ribs, looks like it, wearing a translucent hat, and looks like she's got a woman, obviously. It's a sexy giant lady. So, hey, you got your sexy giant demon right there. For those people who want Emu to be a woman, sexy giant woman. There you go. You got that. So take it for what you will. And then it appears with and now Killingham explains, it appears with the rhythm of the rain dance, all right? Now, this kind of links back to Nika, the sun god, who had the dance, like doon da 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 da, doon da 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 da, doon da 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 da. And so then he responds, waha, Zaza. Now, that's frightening. And so then he says all the kids are being dragged away and the entire Western village is being flooded. And then he says, and then Killingham contacts Summers. He's like, all right, he's like, I'm bringing them over right now. Get ready, Summer. He's like, I'm ready whenever you are, right? And then on the way, we see 2 different perspectives. We see Zoro on Goldberg, see Sanji skywalking, and then Sanji skywalking sees Sanji Goldberg. And then you basically see Sanji say, hey, don't screw this up, you damn cook. And you've got Sanji responding back, hey, don't, right back at you, you damn moss head. So end of chapter, break next week. And so pretty much chapter rolls from there. And so what we're probably going to see is a fight between Killingham and Sanji and Summers and Zoro. Because remember, Killingham wanted to get back after being humiliated by Sanji. He didn't think he needs to, but apparently he should have, because now he's fighting Zoro, and he's not powered up again. He's going to have to fight Sanji again. And now Summers will have to fight Zoro, and Zoro's going to have to destroy the ship. Now, I personally wanted Summers to fight Sanji because Summers is a sexist piece of shit who beats women for shits and giggles and is a sadist to the utmost degree. And so, yeah, I wanted to see that, and I wanted to see Zoro fight Killingham so he could try to manifest essentially what Zoro's biggest fears, losing to Sanji, not being able to fulfill his promise to Kawina. So there's that. But another thing that stood out to me, and this is probably the biggest thing people have been pointing out, if there is a Nika fruit, then this is almost certainly there's certainly only a Zaza fruit, all right? This is probably the fruit Draken has. If he does have a devil fruit, most likely he does, because what sort of weather-based ability we see him summon down thunder, lightning strikes, summon wind that basically does it. People said it's the wind fruit, the Kaze no Mi, or the storm fruit. Now, me personally, Mythical Zone, almost Mythical Zone again. Me personally, I don't want it to be Mythical Zone or Loki. I want it to be a storm fruit. Would that be broken? Yes, but we've seen broken devil powers. Whitebeard, Blackbeards, even Laws to an extent are overpowered as hell. Literally, it's got the name OP in it. Like, again, I wouldn't be mad if it was a mythical zone, but that'd be another one. That's like, what, we're up to 4 in this arc already. Why not at this point? But yeah, that's like, we got a break next week coming up. Obviously, I'm gonna make a video talking about basically the fights between Sanji and Zoro versus Killingham Summers. So we'll see that. But yeah, we've got another Rain God, and I want people to understand. Go back and reread Skypiea. There's this panel. I'm gonna put it up on the screen of the people basically of Skypiea. Basically, there's the sacrifice going on essentially, and it talks about the rain god, forest god, sun god, sea god, and it's flooding. Again, people, like all this stuff, One Piece is basically a big snapshot, and you can find a lot of things in Skypiea. Like you can just see references in there to the point where Imu's pants, and you probably said, oh, Eneru discovered a mural of Imu and basically cosplayed as him, right? And so we see it from there. But yeah, I'm Malik signing out. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on this video. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Help me out against the algorithm. Small channel, new channel. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day.